welcome to ScreenHour with me, Kieran.
And me, Mikey.
The show where we give you our impressions and experiences for films, series and games.
We start by sharing our initial spoiler-free impressions, and we warn you before we deep dive into those spoilers.
If you enjoy our content, don't forget to follow us on your preferred platforms with our handle, ScreenHour. In this episode, we are going to theorise what could happen in part 2 of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. So with that being said, I should emphasise that this episode will be nothing but spoilers. So if you haven't seen Dead Reckoning Part 1 yet, go and listen to our previous episode where we give you our spoiler-free impressions in the first half. But ultimately, you just need to go and see this film in the cinema as soon as you can. No film is worth seeing in the cinema more than this one. I mean, Top Gun Maverick is probably the only other contender. But anyway, so there the formalities are out of the way. I have seen this film 3 times now in the cinema. I've seen it once in standard 2D. I've also seen it in IMAX 2D, and I've seen it in 4DX 2D. And I actually think I'm going to be seeing it again in IMAX for my mom's birthday.
What's 4DX? What's that like? I've never seen 4DX.
So 4DX is when you're sat in like the vibrating chairs that moves around, and there's like a spray at you. So it like sprays air and it sprays water, but there's also little jets by the side of you. And
yeah, I thought it was, but is it worth it?
It is an experience for sure, and it's only going to tailor to like certain films, such as like a John Wick or a Tom Cruise film. That's literally all I can really think of that I think is warranted. You won't watch like say The Notebook in 4DX, like that just doesn't work. But such as like the submarine explosion at the beginning of the film, that was incredible. Because you're like fucking shaking like shit in your chair, like you're in the explosion, and you get like a little bit of water spray at you. The motorcycle jump was amazing because you're jumping, but you're feeling the wind on you as well because the chair like leans forward. The train, you actually feel like your chair's vibrating as if you're going along the tracks. So it's just, all right, and you just feel that in your seat, and you're like, wow, this is kind of cool. And then the scene also right at the beginning when he's riding the horse through the desert trying to save Ilsa sort of thing, and all the gunshots and everything are going off. You're getting whipped by this wind from like all around you, but then the bullets, there's like little like pressurized jets either side of your neck, and you just hear like this sort of like you feel like the jet of air come past your neck. So it feels like bullets are whizzing past you. It's very cool, but when there isn't action and it's quite like a settled sort of scene or whatever, it feels a little too it takes you out of it because you're like, well, the fuck, my chair's going a bit crazy and there's nothing really happening on screen.
So it doesn't tune into it that much.
It does like tune in. It's like someone's programmed it to like work with the film. Like they've obviously watched the film and like, okay, for this scene the chair's going to do this and whatever. So someone's programmed it. But when it's meant to be more sort of a subtle scene, the chair itself is a little bit too lively. The chair itself needs to be a little bit more subtle. The particular moment, like right at the beginning of the film, the camera's slowly zooming through the ocean, isn't it? In the Baltic Sea, is it? Towards the submarine. And they're like, rather than the chair sort of like rocking with the camera pan as it zooms in, right? It just sort of rocks in a different sort of axis. It's like, it's off. And it's like, well, why? This felt wrong. And there were times where I was thinking, what the fuck's my chair doing? And I wasn't paying attention to the film. But in the action scenes and the action moments, it was really cool. The only other thing is, make sure you don't have like a drink or something because your fucking drinks go fucking everywhere. Like,
making it ruin.
Yeah, I'd say it's a hell of an experience. And it's only like £2 more expensive than IMAX, and IMAX is only £2 or £3 more expensive than standard 2D. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not a massive difference.
Yeah, exactly.
But for the most ultimate experience, I think the IMAX is because with the IMAX, you obviously get the bigger screen. Because that's another thing, the 4DX, it's on a standard 2D screen. It's not an IMAX screen, so you don't have the IMAX screen in IMAX sound as well as the moving seats. It's like, well, that would make sense, you know, because 4DX is like the ultimate experience.
So 4DX is just 4DX, it's not IMAX plus 4DX.
No, it's literally just 2D screen, but your chair moves. That's all it is. And I was like, well, that's wrong. You know, surely it should be the next step up. It shouldn't just be a step backwards, but then there's a side step to the chair. Like it should be a full IMAX experience. But yeah, I think the best experience I had watching this film, don't get me wrong, 4DX was an interesting experience and it was quite cool. But to see it again, I'd go IMAX because it was the sound that really sold the film for me. And I said in our previous episode that when Tom does the jump into the parachute, I felt it didn't quite hit as hard. But when I watched it in the IMAX and with the sound as well as the visuals and of the screen, like bigger screen and the brighter screen and the higher fidelity and just the sound design around you.
Well, like the silence, how it pops as well.
Exactly. I was so absorbed into it. I was like, holy shit, like, yeah, this jump is fucking awesome. Again, with every other scene. So I experienced 4DX, so you don't have to. But yeah, the IMAX experience was incredible. But with seeing this film 3 times now, I've seen a lot of details that we missed when we first spoke about it in our previous episode. I've also noticed a couple of goofs as well, where you're like, oh, wait, that was off or that was wrong. But I won't say any of that because it's neither here nor there. In terms of like interesting little details, when you're in the CIA briefing room, but I don't think it's a CI briefing room. I think it's like some sort of, it's all the heads of state sort of briefing room of all the different departments, like NSA, CIA, and all of that like all together. There's actually a photo of Angela Bassett on the wall. And obviously Angela Bassett was...
She's in Rogue Nation, isn't it?
No, Fallout. So she's Henry Cavill's, like, handler, let's say. Can't remember what her position is. I don't know if she's director of the CIA or... No, I think she is, actually. I think she might be the director of the CIA. But she's sort of, like, on the wall. Like, it's completely out of focus. You can't tell it's her. But you can kind of, like... An educated guess would...
Within context, it makes sense, isn't it?
Yeah, as Angela Bassett. And I'm like, is she there as sort of the director of CIA, or is the photo sort of like that presidential photo with the flags behind them? So I was like, is she now the president? I was like, does that mean something? Is that going to mean something? With part 2 coming out, something in part 2 is going to happen that makes us think, oh, we need to rewatch part 1 to notice this little individual moment to make it tie into part 2. Because that always happens, doesn't it? Sort of like, as an example, Guardians of the Galaxy. If you rewatch Guardians of the Galaxy from the beginning, you actually see how traumatized Rocket is with everything he says. And it all makes sense, obviously, when you watch the third one. But if you, after watching the third one, you watch 1 and 2 and even some of the Avengers again, you actually see like his character progression and you understand his character far more. And I think this will definitely be the case when part 2 comes out and you watch part 1. With that being said then, when Ethan meets Grace, he says, what do I call you? And she goes, Grace. So she pulled that name out of thin air, right? And I'm sure we both noticed that in first time round. It's just we didn't mention it in our previous episode.
Yeah, like I still feel like, well, I don't know. She's more sincere towards the end, but I still feel like you can't 100% trust her character.
Yeah.
And like her like pulling Grace out of thin air is obviously at the very start of the film, so where like you don't really know her at all. But at the same time, with her coming into her own, but particularly towards the end, you start to trust her character more, and Ethan trusts her more.
Yeah.
But even now, I wouldn't say she would, I don't know, team up with the entity or whatever. But at the same time, I feel like if there's a bit where she can escape and, get off scot-free with loads of money, she just would look.
Well, I've got a theory on Grace. So when Grace is disguised as a White Widow and she hands over her passport, and is obviously hiding her passport with his thumb, so you can't see her full name. But her first name is M-A-R and her surname is F-R. So F-R, I don't know what to speculate from that. But M-A-R, the woman in Ethan's flashbacks, which is like the catalyst for Ethan knowing Gabriel, she is called Marie. Now, obviously, it can't be the same woman because of like the age difference and the timeline and all of that. But could Haley's character Grace be related to that Marie? Is she Marie's sister, Marie's daughter? Is Ethan's daughter? Like, is there something there? It's so like, grasping at straws. But I think there's something there because when they are in the, when they have the meeting with the White Widow and everyone's there, Gabriel, Ilsa, Grace and Ethan, Grace first learns Ethan's name at that moment because Gabriel says, hello, Ethan. It's been a long time. And Grace looks at Ethan like, holy shit, you're Ethan. She has this look of like,
Sure.
I've heard that name. She looks at him like, I know that name. I've heard that name, like a recognition. And I'm like, I wonder if there's something to conclude from that. I don't know. Like, again, this speculation. It's all theorizing. But I find that quite interesting. Now, moving on, the same moment when they are having this meeting, the White Widow's party, or the Entity's party as it is, Gabriel rocks up with 2 pocket knives, right? But he puts the pocket knives on the table and the camera focuses on these pocket knives to prove that they're put on the table. So usually when the camera shows you something, it's like, take note, this is important. But when Gabriel leaves, he doesn't take the pocket knives with him. They're left on the table. And who picks up the pocket knives? Grace, when she runs out. So a little theory I've sort of worked on here, I could be completely way off, but it's a theory. Because he is working with the entity is showing him particular routes and paths to a probable next. So the entity sort of said to him, look, 1 or 2 people is going to die, Grace or Ilsa. If you take the pocket knives and leave them on the table, Grace will use them in your fight against yourself, against Gabriel, and that will prolong the fight long enough to allow Ilsa to come into the fight. So Ilsa is the one that's killed because he actually uses those pocket knives to kill Ilsa. But it allows Haley or Grace to defend herself longer to allow Ilsa to come up. But if he didn't leave the pocket knives on the table, it means he would have killed Grace and Ilsa would have gotten away. So I don't know if there's, because I think the entity's sort of playing here of, one or the other.
Yeah, but I still feel like Ilsa would have got there, wouldn't she?
Yeah, no, but she would have killed Grace, straight off. He would have ding-dong ditched, right? And then Ilsa would have rocked up to see Grace's body on the floor.
Oh, you mean because only Grace is like slowing him down?
Yeah. So basically, the entity slows Ethan down.
I can't remember what happens to Grace. Does she just get knocked out? Does she just get knocked out by Gabriel?
Yeah, she gets knocked out. She just gets battered and thrown to the side. Yeah. But Ethan is obviously he's running towards her, and the entity pretends to be Benji's voice, and then he gets sent in this alleyway and he has to fight Paris. Then the entity says to Ilsa, because it's through the mic and everyone's listening in, basically says, Ethan can't make it, but you can, Ilsa. Because Ethan said to Ilsa, run, go as far away as you can. So Ilsa's just fucking legging it out. She's not trying to fight anyone. But then the entity says, no one can save Grace but Ilsa. And Ilsa's like, I've got to go save her. And that's another thing as well. When Gabriel discloses someone will die tonight, either her, Grace, or Ilsa, Grace's face is like, holy fucking shit, I don't want to die. But then you look over at Ilsa, and Ilsa's looking down because Ilsa's just Ilsa knows it's going to be her. She knows she's going to sacrifice herself to keep Grace alive.
I think, yeah, she was just ready to die. She's like, I feel like she's got to that point where her character she's all right with it.
Then after this, my dad had a good theory. My dad says he doesn't think Ilsa's dead. He reckons they pretended Ilsa's dead for the entity so Ilsa can come round the back way, completely off-grid, to destroy the entity or in some way. I like the theory, and it seems like a very Mission Impossible way to go about it. But after these 2 times of watching it since, the way they show her death and the way that they sort of talk about her afterwards and how they sort of, mourn her.
It's more explicit.
They all talk about her as if she's dead, not the entity's not there at the time to sort of trick it. The only trick they're doing is for us, the audience. So I don't quite see how it would work to bring her back. And I don't know, the stupid theory of, is all of part 1 just a typical probable next that the entity is created and part 2 is actually what happens?
No, I think I'll be bullshit.
But I'm like, that just feels like, it's like part 1's a dream state. That just seems like an absolute cop-out. I mean, it's a possibility, it's a probable, but it's, I think that'd be shit to have that.
I don't think Ilsa's dead because, I think Ilsa's dead. I don't think she's coming back because all of the other, little twists they do with the masks in the other films, and it's part of the fun of it, is you find out that they're a twist within the next, 10 minutes of the film. And I feel like it will cheapen her death, and people, I don't know, I don't think people will just be happy with it, like myself included, in the sense that if she just comes back, there's a difference between like twists
within the same movie.
Within the same movie and then waiting a year, and it's all right if it pays off, but like I feel like because it was done right the first time, it's not like.
Because I could see a situation where Ethan's like captured by Gabriel, is being tortured or something, and then someone's pushed into the place and shooting people up or whatever, and then she comes in, she beats everyone up, she saves Ethan, and then she like takes off some sort of I'm not saying like a duplicate mask, but I'm just on about like something like a face covering or whatever. She'll take that off, and he's like, "Holy shit, it's Ilsa!" And she was like, "I found a way to destroy the entity." Because Luther's also disappeared, hasn't he? Just before like the whole train sequence, he disappeared to go work on the back door in.
Time to go off grid,
yeah. So he's gone off grid. Has Ilsa gone off grid, and she's dead? In quotations. I feel like it's such a big thing to kill her off because she was a real big character and she was a very liked character in like the fan base. So I just think it's wrong to have killed her off. So I'm trying to find plausible reasons for her to still be alive.
No, I don't think. I think that's the exact reason why they've done it and they won't bring her back. It's because it makes so much sense. Like as much as I like Vic Rames, like, and he's cool, I feel like it was going to be her or Benji just because they're so liked.
Yeah.
And they're so popular. And to go for the juggler top thing. So I did read up. Well, I say read up. I saw this week was that they was thinking of de-aging Tom Cruise for the flashbacks.
Yeah. I was going to mention this in the past episode, but I thought it was too much to say. We've already said a lot.
I feel like what they're going to do is they'll have a prolonged scene of the flashback.
You reckon?
I'm almost like 90% sure that us just seeing this Gabriel stab, we don't know the relationship between Tom Cruise and Gabriel and this person who Gabriel murdered.
Marie.
You don't know, like, and also, like, I know it's been alluded to in the other ones, but it's almost like Catch Me If You Can, like, in the sense that Tom Cruise used to be, like, one of the bad guys, but, like, I can't remember, like, it's never really, like, spoken about much before he joined IMF/CIA, like.
Yeah.
He wasn't like, he was a con man, he was, a martial artist, come con man. I'm probably going to rewatch him, like I know you are now, as well. Pretty obsessed with him, but it's what I like about it, and like I kind of appreciate him, especially rewatching him now. He's like Superman in all of them. Don't get me wrong, but the stunts slowly build up in spectacle and in like plausibility, but like they also like do this really good thing of just building the tension up. Like you still think he's gonna fuck up or die.
Yeah, every time, even though he's already done all this shit.
Even though he's done 6 films, even though he's like climbed the skyscraper or he's bloody just tanked explosions. In 3 now, it's just the silly stuff where it's watching it, like, spoilers for films in 2006, I suppose. But in the Philip Seymour Hoffman in the bathroom scene, I'm watching that, you think the big guy's going to get him. And I'm like, why are they building tension for this? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm watching this retrospectively. But even in 2006, you're like, yeah, this guy's huge, but...
Are you on about when the Irish guy is hiding behind the door with the real Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Yeah, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, yeah. And you're like, even if he gets rumbled, they just batter him. Like that fight scene in Fallout, which is really good. It still managed to breed the tension of just... And what I find interesting, in 3, he's saying he's a teacher and he teaches him, and like one of the main guilty things.
Oh, teaching Leslie?
The one who died,
Lindsay.
Yeah. And obviously, don't get wrong, I don't want it like to be too more, and I don't want to see him like have too much training himself. But he's the definition of learning on the job. There's no like, he's got no like. Don't get wrong, I know like SAS trained people do have like in real life like more like on their CV, so even though it's Secret Service, I wouldn't say like this person's qualified for this person's qualified.
I've murdered all these people.
I've done this shooting course, I don't know. But I like how it slowly progressed. But like you think to yourself, like,
yeah,
how has he learned this stuff? But it's just like through his like experience of just.
Yeah, it's not like in the first Mission Impossible he's to jump the bike. It's taken him 7 films to jump the bike off a mountain because he's progressively becoming a better spy. He's having to push himself beyond the limits to get what he needs done. sort of thing. So it has been a slow progression. And I even said, the first one of the big stunt was the Burj Khalifa number 4. But I'm not entirely certain, but I'm pretty sure in number 3, he actually does the pendulum swing from the one building to the other in Shanghai, because you actually watch him run and jump off the building. But as he's swinging from the building to the other building, the camera's really close on him and the background's really like blurring out of focus. And it just, I don't know if that's a bit CG or not, but the moment of him actually running and jumping off the building, that's fully him. That like doesn't seem like CG at all.
In the first one, it's the fish tank blowing up.
Yeah, that's him.
And I think like that's like a weird stunt, because like it's not a huge spectacle, but at the same time, like to contradict my point, it is cool as fuck to watch. Like, yeah, it's like jumping off like on a motorbike, crosshair jumping off a cliff. But that did happen. Like, he was talking on Graham Norton years ago about it, because he had his 25-year anniversary not long time ago of the film. But he was saying he nearly died on that because they weren't counting the explosion properly. And it was like something like 16 tons of water. So if he missed it, the force of the water would just like break him.
Yeah. And then on number 2, he's obviously right at the beginning of the film, he's doing the rock climbing, but he is harnessed. I mean, well, he's harnessed for all of it, isn't he? Safety first.
Very flimsy desk, but like, yeah, he's harnessed, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like, oh, number 4 is when he started doing all the big stunts. It's like, actually, no, he has been doing stunts through every single one. And this is all because he became his own producer. He's able to sort of convince people because he is the producer and get the right people on board to help him out. And I think it is a shame that it's, he's 61 now, and only now has he really got all the right people behind him to be able to do these incredible stunts. And it's a shame he couldn't have done this 20 years earlier. But 20 years earlier, the people he's met now wouldn't have the expertise, the experience, the technology wouldn't exist. So it's all relative, but it's a shame that it's only now it's coming and he's only getting older.
Well, it's funny you say about him being a producer on it and stuff like that. I remember a few years ago, when they was filming Fallout or something like that, there's a few occasions where basically he'd try him being a producer with Chris McCarthy, he'd turn around and be like, oh, we want to do this stunt, whatever. And then someone would turn around and be like, you can't get the insurance for that, or you can't do this. And because he can, he would just fire them.
Yeah.
Find someone else and just do it.
Yeah, I heard this.
Don't get me wrong, whether that's, I can't remember the exact thing, but basically that happened.
I think it was the health and safety guy. He wanted to do a stunt, and the health and safety guy goes, oh, you'll never be able to do that. So he fired him and got someone that said, yeah, we can do it. We'll find a way. And I understand that mentality of, I don't want someone that just says no. I want someone that thinks, it's an interesting idea. Let's look into it and see how we can do it to the best way we can and as safely as we can. And I think that's mostly what he's looking for. But just to be like, oh, no, you can't do it. And then he was like, oh, we fired him and found someone else. It's not quite as simple as that or as mean as that. But yeah. Another point, right? We said, how does Gabriel communicate with the entity? Right? How does that work? And I completely forgot about it. But if you recall, on the train, Paris like jumps onto the train, she like walks through the carriages or whatever, and then she goes into this little room and she unclips this box and he's lying down inside the box. Right, and he's got this mask on him. Do you remember that moment?
I do, yeah, but I remember that moment because I thought that was him getting smuggled onto the train.
Yeah, I think there was an element of that for sure, because he's got this mask on, which is very reminiscent of, is it Zhao from Die Another Day? And he's got that reconstructive mask on.
Yeah, and it also upset me a bit because it lent in too much into sci-fi for me.
Yeah, that was a little, yeah.
And I was like, I don't like this. Because one of the things about like the Mission Impossible films which makes it so good and it leads into the stunts or whatever.
So grounded, realistic.
Yeah, it's semi-grounded. It's almost like the Nolan Batmans in the sense that
if Batman were real, this is what it would be.
Yeah, exactly. It's not mega grounded as in like you think it could happen tomorrow, but it kind of could. It's not a superhero film. It's not science fiction. But like you say, this is why like this artificial intelligence thing with him jumping in. So what was you going to say, sorry?
Yeah, so that actual mask has like an image of the entity on it. You know, the entity is kind of like a circle, but like pulsing circle or whatever.
The Windows Media Player, Microsoft Media Player visualization thing from the early 2000s.
Music player visualization, exactly that. But yeah, that's sort of on the mask. And when they take the mask off, he kind of has this perplexed look on his face, kind of like, oh, this is what the entity wants me to do, sort of thing. But yeah, I was like, I completely forgot about that first time round. But after like the second time round, I was like, oh, right, yeah, okay, that's probably how he communicates. And there's like moments where, you know, when he jumps backwards off the train to land in the truck to like drive away safely or whatever, before he fights Ethan, because he's on the roof of the train and he's basically, you know, waiting out for to jump into the truck. Ethan comes on top of the train, and if you notice, he looks at his watch to be like, kind of like Mr. Incredible. Yeah, I've got time, like, to fight Ethan before I jump in my truck.
I like that choreography. Like, that was like very Mission Impossible, like a countdown and him jumping off.
Yeah.
To time that.
Before we continue, we'd also like to take this time to sincerely thank you for listening to us. And if you would like to participate in an episode,
you can leave your thoughts on what you'd like to see us cover next in the comments below, or through our Instagram.
Remember, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Instagram with our handle, ScreenHour.
I think what they will do in the next one, and I hope they did this and was alluding to it a bit, is go more analog, like less.
Yeah, old school.
Go really old school. And maybe even the entity takes over all of the net and they are just going mega analog like.
Kind of like in Fallout when they have that scene where they're inside like a hospital and they're talking to Niles Delbrook, is it? And they're basically like the explosions have all gone off and they've got the actual mask of the guy for CNN or whatever it is. And he's basically saying all these explosions have gone off in like, the holy cities or whatever. And they're like, oh my God, it's happened. And it's like, oh, I'll give you the code for the phone if you read the manifesto on the air, and start reading the manifesto on the air. They give him the code, and then Ethan just goes, go. And like the whole set falls apart, and it's...
No, not...
Like the music's like boom, 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 goes into it. But it's sort of like that moment, it's like, holy shit, like they actually failed at a mission. They didn't get the mission. They did, like, the impossible mission was actually impossible. But it's like, oh no, that was just a setup to get this. With that scene in particular, my point is that I was like, holy shit, for once they actually failed. How is this going to go forward? Oh no, they didn't. That was just a ploy. So maybe with this one, as you say, with the entity, it actually does take over and they failed. So now they have to find out a way to bring it back with all the analog. How I see what you were saying and how I sort of want to piggyback on your thought process there.
You're right. I'd like to see them fail to a degree, and I also feel like they might do a time jump in it.
What do you mean by time jump? I hope there's no time travel.
No, not time travel. Just
yeah. I
feel even like it may be a couple of months in the continuity, it will jump forward. So Vigrams has been like trying to track down, or like,
I see,
the entity. Grace has been trained up more, or something like that. I think like that will happen. I also think if it was me, I'd have the last fight scene between Gabriel and Ethan to be a no bells and whistles fight, just a straight up tooth and nail brutal fist fight. Not on a train, not even on the bridge, just on a normal street or in a room, and just stabbing each other or just using glass or whatever. I don't know, just beating the fuck out of each other to make it feel more personal. So I think they might do that. I don't know. I also feel like someone else probably should die. I think Kittredge might die as well. I feel like they want to.
Yeah, you probably could, but they did kill off Alec Baldwin, who was like, you know, their boss. So. But he was the secretary, he wasn't the director. Tom's come out and said, like, yeah, he'd love to keep going until he's 80, but I kind of see Ethan dying to save the cause. As Ethan says, your life will always matter more to me than my own. So I feel like he will sacrifice himself, I think, to like save the world, as it were. But I don't think that's probably in Ethan's interest, but I don't think that's in Tom's interest. Because I think Tom just wants to keep bashing these out as many as he can, and I'm all for it. But what is interesting as well, like on a second watch and even a third watch, I actually start to see them building a new team. It's quite obvious when you think about it, but to watch it a couple of times, you're like, actually, no, that does make sense. So, you know, Paris could easily fit into the new team. Obviously, you got new Haley, and Ving Rhames is probably going to like, you know, fuck this, I'm off, and now it's time I retired or whatever. Benji could probably still stick around, I guess. But then also the, I think it's called Dagger, the character, who is basically one of the guys chasing after Ethan.
Eli Roth's partner.
Yeah, so basically the actual actor's middle name, they call him Tarzan because that's his middle name, but he was also in Top Gun. He played Coyote.
He made his film debut in 2019. That is insane. He started his first film was in 2019. Last year he was in Top Gun Maverick, and now he's in Mission Impossible Dead.
Yeah. You also got Charles Parnell in this one that's from Top Gun as well.
He was in stuff 2016, but his actual film debut was. I feel like Degas is going to
join Team Ethan,
pull a full face turn. Yeah.
Well, you say face turn. He's not like the enemy because he's fighting for the interest of America.
Yeah, but no, because he's not on Ethan's team, and Ethan's the protagonist.
Yeah. Well, on the train, and he's talking to his partner.
Eli partner. He's like, every time he's gone rogue, maybe he's had a good reason.
Yeah, he's had a good reason. And he says, well, what side are you on? And he says, I'm on the side of the world, or something along those lines. I did remember exactly what he said, but I can't remember now. But basically, his response was like, that's exactly what Ethan would say. So it makes me immediately think, he's Team Ethan 100%, and it's a high possibility he's just going to become part of the IMF or something. But even that character, what's the actor called again? This is partner?
Eli Wiggum.
Yeah, him. He says, right at the beginning, it's like, this sounds personal. Do you know him? And he goes, no, I don't know him. And he goes, but it is personal. And the guy doesn't say anything. So I thought, well, what's his connection with Ethan that makes it seem somewhat personal to him? Like, he says he doesn't know Ethan, but there's some sort of...
Yeah, I spotted that. I feel like...
So was he meant to be part of IMF, but he didn't, pass the psych or something? But that's not how IMF works, because you get a choice and you say yay or nay.
I feel like what that's going to do, again, I mentioned in our other episode, is if it was me, do a Fast and Furious and be like, was he the security guard pulling shift on the first Mission Impossible when he nicked the names of the CIA agents?
Yeah, he got fired and he couldn't afford food for his family or whatever, yeah.
I got mixed up, isn't it? The reason I called him Eli, just even though his name's Shearwig and the actor on the counter's called Briggs. He was in Broadwalk Empire for 6 years, and his counter name in Broadwalk Empire is called Eli. But I feel like they've got... This is what I'm thinking for part 2, is between the history of Gabriel and Ethan and that hint of, it is personal, they've got to build more subplot for that.
And you think they'll probably do that through more of a bigger flashback segment?
Yeah. What I will say is I feel like this one's going to be longer.
3 hours long sort of thing?
Yeah, I feel like it will be.
Because when you mentioned the de-aging, McHugh says that he didn't want to de-age Tom. He says there's some brilliant de-aging out there that does look really good, but he says, but I don't want you to be looking at it thinking, is that good CGI or bad CGI on the de-aging? He says, I just want you to listen to the scene and feel the emotion. I don't want you to be worrying about whether the CGI is good or not. And I think that's a very plausible answer, because me being me, I would 100% be watching the scene going, oh, where's the flaw in the CGI? And I wouldn't just be enjoying the scene, enjoying the moment. So in those flashbacks, you don't actually see Tom's face. He's kind of just got a bit of long hair. It's more of like a silhouette. But also, I think that's a bit wrong, because in the earlier films, he doesn't have long hair. The first time he has long hair is number 2.
Yeah, in the first film, he has really short hair, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
something I will say, not so much speculation for the next one, but more so a retrospective, is all of them up until Rogue Nation were directed by different people,
Yeah.
And it was quite cool them getting directed by different people, in the sense that it's a bit like the MCU, where people would do, each film would feel a bit different because they'd have different styles and different directional, just cliches. People have, certain directors have different ways they want to shoot things or different action sequences. And it's quite weird in the sense that, since Christopher McQuarrie's been on, he has been great, and I think his style particularly is just absolutely mental stunts, which just build tension like that. And that's not to undermine the other ones, because Ghost Protocol has that. And so what I found really interesting, even, I remember I've always been into films, so I remember hearing about this, but I can't remember when. I think it came out quite a while now, Ghost Protocol.
2011?
Yeah, I think it was. But I'm pretty sure it was Brad Bird's first live action film.
Well, yeah, he directed Incredibles.
He directed Incredibles, like, with Pixar, obviously.
Another little thing, because you were mentioning how Rogue Nation was like the first one of Christopher McQuarrie. Christopher McQuarrie actually wrote and produced number 4.
Yeah, it seemed to change quite a bit there. But it's like J.J. Abrams, like, number 3 is good as well. And they are all good.
Does J.J. still produce them?
I don't think he does.
I know he does. I know he did a couple after.
What Will's saying, which is particularly cool.
I know he just did for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. He was just an uncredited writer. He didn't get credited. Also, did you know he was an executive producer on Reacher? McHugh.
No, I didn't know that. It does kind of feel like that. But it's quite cool and doesn't feel like this. Is how there's such a gap between each one. Is, 1996 was the first one. I think it was like 2000 was number 2, I think.
Then 06.
2000 was number 2. And then like there's a 6-year gap, then number 3, then 5-year gap. And then Rogue Nation.
Rogue Nation, what, 2015?
Yeah, so 2015, yeah.
And then 2018.
And then Fallout was 2018. So I think that's what another good thing, like to speak on the grander picture, is that they're more of an event because they don't
rush
and they don't rush them, and that's obviously due to like a combination of things. Obviously, doing stunts like that don't take 5 minutes to plan and do. The writing's good, and they are just great. But also, it's part 2 obviously comes out next year, 2024.
Yeah, it's the quickest turnover we've had ever.
And from all the others, but that's also like we suggested and Kieran mentioned in the last episode, is that part 1 is the only one where it's not really got a definitive ending. So that's fair enough. But I think other franchise films could learn a lesson from that to a degree.
Yeah, and I think they've actually recorded part of part 2 while filming part 1 as well. But I know they go back after they finished all their press tour. For the releases across the globe. Once that's done, they're literally going straight into filming part 2, like all the next bits. So they're not going to hang around. But as you say, it's the quickest turnover we've had. But because I feel like they had all of lockdown and all of that to plan it and devise it, and Tom's just been training every fucking day for whatever stunt it is he's doing next, which it's apparently going to be bigger and better. So they say. Then, it's not like they're half-arsing it. They've had a lot of time to sort of figure this out and bring us something spectacular.
Quick random shout out, and I'm going to look forward to watching it, rewatching it. It's been ages since I watched Ghost Protocol, but I do really like the prison scene at the start.
Mm-hmm.
How he breaks out of prison. It's like really, I don't know, it's really weird. You don't see anything out like grubby Tom Cruise. Like you don't see anything else like that in the franchise.
Well, so I've recently been rewatching them all, and I rewatched number 3 2 nights ago, and I started watching number 4 again last night.
What do you feel like in this one, even though he's turned around and said he's going to play Ethan till he's 80 odd or forever? Like you said, I feel they're going to try and soft retire him. Bit of a cynical point of view on it is
that's my job.
For them, yeah, exactly. It's dangerous for them to keep going on. It's I remember just reading a comment on it, OGN, Screen Crush, ScreenHour, everyone's doing videos on it on the net because it's a great new film which just came out type of thing. And the top comment on one of the videos I was watching was, it's nice to see a franchise or basically it's unlikely, but it happens in this case, is that the franchise keeps getting better. And the more likeliness, if they keep doing them, I don't want them to flog a dead horse.
Yeah, they do need to end at some point because you can't keep getting better. That's just exhausting for yourself, the creator.
Not to speak like the NC, but there's pure probability chances. You keep getting you're bound to have a dud or whatever. I don't know. Look at the Indiana Jones films; they're decisive to say the least. We won't go into that.
I thought you were better to admit.
Yeah, they're decisive to say the least. Don't get me wrong, as I've said before, the MCU falls on its own sword because there's so many of them and the continuity in that. And again, that's another thing I like about this is the films have continuity, but it doesn't feel like they're tied by it.
No. Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like they're like, oh, we can't do that because of this, but they also are willing to like write themselves out a hole.
Yeah, like they respect what they've come from, but they don't let it hinder what they go to do next.
If it was me, I'd soft retire him after this one. I also don't see it coming back. Like, I know you said about with another team, but I also can't see them like...
No, because who's going to do the stunts? That's what you watch Mission for. Well, at least that's what I watch it for nowadays, at least.
It's Tom Cruise's baby. Like, it's the only thing, as much as, don't get me wrong, he's done 2 Top Guns, God knows how many years later, but he's great. But it's only, and he's done obviously another million other films, but if I look at his IMDb now, as you can speak in a second, it's his only mainstay franchise. And it's only him who can really pull it off.
Yeah, like he's the absolute brainchild. He's like the working force behind it. He's the passion. He's everything's pushing everything in the right direction to make it work. And my dad asked me, he's like, do you reckon Tom would ever just go straight to directing? And I said, no. He entertains. He has to be in front of the screen. He has to do that stuff. I was like, yeah, he might direct as well as act, but I think he will more co-direct like he does with McHugh.
Yeah, the only film, just by me quickly looking at his IMDb now, he's done more than one of, is, other than Impossibles,
Top Gun,
is Jack Reacher and Top Gun.
So Jack Reacher was direct. I think the first one was written and directed by McHugh.
That's quite interesting, actually.
Am I right?
I've only watched clips of that. The first one you said written directed by McHugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is directed by McHugh. Yeah. I might have to watch them, even though they're not meant to be good as a TV show. But
well, no, they're not as good as a TV show, but the first one actually is quite enjoyable. I mean, they're both enjoyable. They're both better than The Mummy.
Wow, The Mummy. Apparently, like, by all accounts, because I haven't watched it because it's so shit, but like, by all accounts, that is his like only bad film for the last like 10 years.
Oblivion's not amazing. A Minority Report was okay.
I really like Minority Report. I love Minority Report.
I say it's interesting, like enjoyable, I guess. I actually really enjoyed Edge of Tomorrow, even though everyone said that it was like Groundhog Day.
No, Edge of Tomorrow's sick.
Yeah, I know.
Great film.
I'd love to see a sequel.
The premise of it being like Groundhog Day is like one of its best things.
Yeah.
If you like chat like this, maybe you should listen to our Tom Cruise episode.
From season 1, episode 7, maybe?
Yeah. I feel like they should retire it after this one. I think they'll try and tie it up a bit more. That's what I'd do.
We'll try and give everyone a conclusion.
Yeah. And I also like, again, bigger picture, more of a, like, a less of a narrative, observation, but more of a, like, Hollywood or franchise thing. Is that I just really like they haven't done spin-offs of it. That's to do with Tom carrying it, really. But I just feel like you're pissing in the wind.
We did mention, I mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy. It could end like that, where the team sort of disbands, but there's a new team, but we don't see the new team. Like the film just ends with the creation of the new team, and it's more of like a IMF continues, but we're not going to tell that story. We'll just let your mind decide that story, sort of thing.
Yeah, they could do.
I don't know, is that cheap in it? I don't know. It's a tough one of how they exactly... I can think of like plot points and things that could happen that I'm intrigued with, but I don't know how to end it. Like, we all assume this is the end because it's a two-parter. Like, it's just how our minds want to compute it. But when I've seen interviews of everyone, they've all said, no one's told us it's the end. So, like, I love the interviews with Simon Pegg and Rebecca Ferguson. Oh, they're so chaotic together. It's brilliant. I want to see them in a film together.
They're always laughing, like, they always look like they're having a good time, yeah.
Yeah. I would just want to see them two, like, in, like, 2 main lead roles together, and I just want to see where that goes. I think that'd be so exciting. I'm also bummed that we can't talk to Rebecca about her death. I want to see some interviews about people asking her about her death and what she thinks is happening next, or...
I feel like they will, like, next year. I feel like next year or 6 months down the line, they probably will have, like, she'll be on, like, the press junket for 2, maybe, and there'll be, like, spoiler talk, even though she won't...
For June 2?
Yeah. Not so much June 2, sorry. Like, I feel like they might even get her, like, press junket in the second one, even though she might not be in it. I don't know.
Well, I was just thinking for June 2, they'll probably be like, oh, yeah, some time has passed now, so I suppose we could talk about your death in Mission Impossible. Yeah, so they might be able to talk about it then, because it's like people that want to see Mission would have seen it by then, so talking about the spoilers wouldn't be too much of an issue. So they might ask you then, like, you know, we're all shocked about your death, or maybe even some of those have already been recorded, it's just haven't been released yet. I don't know, but I do want to know her take on it, because for her, she's like at the absolute pinnacle. Like, what film franchise can you get in that's better than Mission? You know what I mean? Like, for the sheer scope of what it is.
June, she's like, June is big
and like interesting, but it's not Mission big, is it?
June is, well, that's because it's been going for 30 odd years, but June is like the sci-fi version of Mission. The first, the one which came out the other year, Denise Villeneuve is like, I don't know, if she's gonna move from one franchise to the other, you're not gonna do worse.
Yeah.
And June, like you say, if your time's up, like, if she was moved from June to Mission Impossible, yeah, that would be better, but like, it's not much of a downgrade, like.
No. And it's like, you know, she decided, like, was it her choice for her character to die? Like, you know, I've had my time in Mission, I want to move on to another project. Because I understand, like, staying with one project for so long is fatiguing, and sort of like the scheduling and all of that can be quite fatiguing and take a lot of your time. But like, she could have just got, you know, tired from just, it's, you know, it's a lot to do. So I think maybe she's just looking at a different path. But that's if it was her choice for her character to die. You know, maybe it was down to McHugh and Tom, like, okay, I think this is where the story should go. We'll talk with Rebecca and be like, look, we're thinking of killing your character off, blah, 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 blah. You know, we're not in the room. We can only speculate on those conversations. But I think if it was her choice, I feel like it might be a wrong choice. I would rather just keep doing the missions than any other franchise. do a Ving Rhames, because he's in fuck all else.
It is in nothing else, yeah.
He doesn't even do the press junkets. He's like, I've done my bit, I go home. A bit like Michael Caine working with Christopher Nolan. He just does his bit and goes home.
I'm surprised, like, he probably is actually, Michael Caine's probably in fucking Oppenheimer for a little bit.
Yeah, he's got to be, isn't he?
But before we, like...
wrap it up, I got something, and it kind of leads into, like, a future episode we'll probably do soon. Something I'd like to see, a bit of a prediction, is I'd like him to have the shit kicked out of him. One of my favourite things about Casino Royale is that... Oh, the torture bit.
Daniel Craig gets tortured, and there's that funny bit where, like...
To the left.
Yeah.
The whole world's going to know that you died scratching my balls.
Yeah. You don't really see, like, anything get battered. And I'd want to see him, like...
I mean, he has a bit of a run for his money in the toilet scene in Fallout, because Henry does a bit of the heavy lifting there, really.
Yeah. But I think that would be cool. That would be happy if that happened. If he just actually get wrecked, like... It's quite weird, because usually, and as you can tell, yeah, we probably entitled this episode, we're gushing over Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1. But usually in, like, sequels, you think, oh, I wish they'd done this, because this was shit. I hope they improve on this. Now, it's just, I hope they expand, because I want to see more of this. I think you probably see Gabriel break down a bit more.
For sure.
And the only, like, little thing I can see happening, which would get on my tits a little bit, is that at the moment, like you said at the end of the last episode, the good guys per se hold all the cards.
Yeah.
And something narrative will happen, and all of a sudden...
They've lost it all.
In the first 10 minutes, they've got one card and it says, fuck you on.
Just completely undo all of the first film.
Yeah, or to completely undo the first film. Or Gabriel's character will know where the submarine is, or he'll know how to do... There's a third key. He's got the third key. I feel like that's the only, like, hole they've got to write themselves out of. They've got to up the stakes, because the good guys are in a good position, but without it being too dumbfounded or silly.
Wait a minute. They've got to go down to the Sevastopol, the submarine, So is the next stunt Tom free diving under the ocean without an oxygen mask?
I don't know.
Is he going to be doing some sort of shit like that? Fucking hell, Tom.
I just feel like they've done it, and they've done it in Rogue Nation.
Rogue Nation, yeah, he held his breath for, 6 minutes or something?
6 minutes or some shit like that. Like.
But that was like in a less pressurized situation, but free diving down into the ocean, because there's a higher amount of pressure, it's collapsing on your lungs more, so therefore it's releasing your breath more, like your capacity more, so it's going to be even worse. There could be something to do with that, because they have to get into the submarine that's exploded on like a shelf somewhere on the Earth's crust or something. You know, it's down there, so it's not like they can bring it up. Like they'll have to visit it somehow. So is it going to be a free dive, or because I can't see them using a little submarine or whatever of their own to get down there?
Oh, I feel they will. Also, look, you just have scuba gear on. I don't know.
Scuba. But it's a deep way. It's a long way down to go. Like, one thing I noticed with this whole Ocean Gate bullshit, the one that went down to see the Titanic, how far down it is, and how far like the free diver can go, and how far down a scuba goes, and how far down a submarine actually goes compared to the depth of the actual Titanic. Like, when you see it all on a map, it's absolutely massive. Like, say 100% is from the surface level down to the Titanic. That's 100%. The actual submarine can only go to the depth of 10%. So there's still 90% to go before you get to the Titanic. That's like proper, like, you know, military grade submarines. Whereas like there are sort of specialized submarines, pressurized submarines that, you know, hold one person or whatever, that can be sent down really deep, such as the one that Jim Cameron used to get down to Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench. So there are sort of like vessels that can do it, but actual like submarines, like nuclear submarines or whatever, they can only go so far down. I can't remember like the full depths, but literally like 10% of the depth of the actual Titanic, like where it's sat. So to see him free dive to the depth or whatever, like it's kind of impossible, but Mission Impossible, there we are.
I don't know. I feel like they'd have to frame a lot of the story to make it have urgency.
Yeah, well, yeah, you've run out of oxygen.
I don't know, like, in the sense that why would he do that? Like you say, it's impossible. So, like, don't get me wrong, it's called Mission Impossible, like you say, but why would he be doing that?
Well, that's what Tom will ask to make it make sense in the script.
Yeah, but yeah, there's our thoughts
on what could happen.
More of a spoiler talk on what could happen.
Yeah, I've been living and breathing Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, the past couple of days, so I've had all of these thoughts on my mind and little theories that I've created in my little mind. Yeah, and I just thought I wanted to talk with Mike, and I thought, fuck it, let's put it on the podcast. I was like, more other people might be interested. And if I'm right, it's there. So I can be like, oh, I said this a year ago. I correctly predicted. But anyway.
But thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this sort of different sort of style of episode of us chatting theories.
Just full on spoiler talk.
Yeah, full on spoiler talk.
Chatting theories and just really like more of a real deep dive like type of thing.
Yeah. So let us know if you want us to sort of do these, maybe more for other films, if it's of any interest to you whatsoever. If not, I might still do them if I find them interesting.
But take it easy.
Yeah, take it easy, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Goodbye.
Bye.